the issue that you're experiencing. You know, it could be pertinent to, you know, many types of problems people are having. So
thank all of you.
Okay, we'll eventually.
Oh, I have a quick question.
Oh, okay.
It's a different subject.
Does Ron have anything further to say? You have your hand up also.
The highways.
Or Lawrence or Ron, do you have anything further to say on this before Diane introduces a new topic? Okay. Go ahead, Diane, then.
In Rockville, Maryland, at Mom's Market, they have all these recycle bins, corks, batteries. Anyway, I was putting some alkaline batteries into the bin, and I look in, and there is the connector identical to what I use for my MacBook Pro, the charger, I guess it's called. And it didn't have a scratch on it. And I couldn't believe it. I don't need a second one, but you never know. So I took it out of the recycle bin, and I have it here at my house. If I try to charge my 4-year-old MacBook Pro with that, am I in any danger of messing it up? Because I don't know why someone idiot would have put that into the alkaline battery throwaway bin, recycle bin.
Okay. Aaron, go ahead.
yeah, I would be a little nervous about using it. You don't know why they put it in there. I mean, they may not be an idiot. They may have put it there for a very specific reason. Maybe it, you know, they used it and their house caught on fire or something. So you know, I would be a little trepidatious of just picking up someone's discarded technology and plugging it in. I mean, I doubt you're a high value target for espionage, but you know, somebody could have altered it and put malware in it, or a keylogger, or who knows what. So I don't know. I would be a little nervous about just picking up someone's charger or USB drive, or you know, thumb drive, whatever. Unless you know the provenance of an item that you have, I would be a little nervous about using it. You know,
Will they recycle it if I take it into the Montgomery Mall Apple store?
yeah.
Thank you.
Bruce was here, you know, I think he'd advocate you can check it on some equipment or something like that to, you know, verify it. But that is kind of sketchy if somebody did trash it. You never know the condition of it, or what could be happening to it, or what it could do too. So
but it's not a battery. What, you know, caught my attention, it's not a battery, but that's the
right.
bin that it was put in. But no need to talk about it any further. I was smart enough not to try it.
Yeah, yes. So maybe if somebody didn't even realize that it wasn't a battery, I don't know. But Ron, go ahead. You have something to say.
Yes, I have a question about the iPhone iPhone SE second generation. I did some reading yesterday on battery replacement, and apparently on the newer iPhones, I guess from iPhone 10 or iPhone 11, if you replace the battery, you have to go through and recalibrate the new battery with some special equipment. Anybody replaced the battery for an iPhone SE second generation?
Why would you need to replace the battery? I have one. Battery's fine.
Well, eventually they do tire out. So
Yes, I've replaced batteries on the iPhone, the first edition, and I didn't have much of a problem there. But I bought a used iPhone SE second generation, and who knows, it might need a battery fairly soon.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just add that I would encourage folks to have Apple do that for you, so you don't have to work.
Yeah.
Any idea how much they charge for that service?
Well, if you want it done correctly, and if you put a value on your time for not having to, research how to calibrate the battery and, and more importantly, worry about if you're doing it correctly, because batteries can, cause problems if they're not done correctly. So you have to weigh it yourself.
Okay. Do we have any new questions to discuss before we turn things over to Jonathan and our guest speaker today? Nothing? Ah, that's good.
Try now.
So, okay, it's there. Yeah, it's set. So, I know another hot topic that's you're certainly going to hear a lot more about too. It's kind of interesting, but we won't discuss too extensively, but hopefully we'll have some meeting in the future to talk more about the progress of AI. If you've been following the chat GPT and all the things that are happening, it's rather exciting. I think Bill Gates has said it's the next significant computing thing to hit in several decades. So we had several friends over at the house yesterday, and I was talking with a civil engineer, and the interesting thing about anybody that does try to approach and talk to some of the AIs that are in existence out there on various subjects is keep in mind that it is not always correct. It's quirky sometimes. Sometimes it'll give totally erroneous suggestions, name products that don't even exist that somewhere it found. But it is something that's going to refine over the years. Oh, somebody on. Oh.
I think Gabe's iPad.
Yeah. But the civil engineer that I was talking to pertaining to it was rather interesting, because it's basically become to a point where it's something that you can use and chat with, and he was saying it does great solving mathematical problems and providing suggestions, and it does give you other things you can think about and other approaches. And so as that AI capability refines, it's going to become better and better. And I think right now most of the AIs, some of the AIs are topic specific, but many are very general, just scouring the internet for whatever comments it wants to make and put together for you. But as it gets more specific in topics and things like that, it can be a very viable companion that people will be working with, such as, if it concentrated just on civil engineering disasters and things like that, it could help a civil engineer that works in that field. So it'll become very field specific. So I just want to make that comment, because just be wary of the results you get if you do decide to play and get advice. Don't totally trust the advice that the AI is giving you currently. Okay. Without any other questions or comments, I will turn it over to Jonathan, who can introduce our guest speaker for today, and perhaps tell us about a few of the meetings coming up in the future too.
Thanks, Roy. Yeah, first to do the latter, I wanted to let everyone know that coming up for the April meeting will be a terrific speaker about things about space from the Planetary Society. So that will be a fun meeting also. Let me quickly introduce Demario. Demario Phipps-Smith joined the News Literacy Project in September 2022 after more than 6 years working as a digital media professional. DeMario is passionate about using his experiences to better serve marginalized communities and amplify their voices in the media space. He studied radio, television, and digital media as an undergrad and has a master's degree in media innovation and content strategy from Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism. DeMario, are you ready to for your presentation?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to speak to you all and to hopefully share some really great information with you. So I'll jump into it. There's a lot into this presentation, so I'm going to jump right into it, and hopefully we have some space for some great conversations and great questions. Okay. Second. Okay, so hey, thank you everybody for tuning in today. I'm really excited to join you. We're going to have a conversation around misinformation, and to have productive conversations when you're, trying to convince somebody that what they're thinking or what they're talking about is actually misinformation. So here's a little bit about myself. I'm a journalist and a former marketing and communications professional. I'm from the west side of Chicago. As you can see in my background, I got the Bears helmet and pictures of Soldier Field. Unfortunately, it looks like the Bears are going to be moving to Arlington Heights soon, but I'll always remember Soldier Field. So as a native of Chicago, my first job out of college, undergrad, was at the Chicago Sun-Times. There I was able to work in community, into community reporting. And I learned just how much distrust.
Somebody hates me. Everyone hates me.
I learned how much mistrust people had in the news media. And so I really wanted to bridge that divide, and I was looking for ways to do so, which led me to going back to school for a master's degree. And then while I was pursuing my degree, I was doing research on different organizations who were doing this type of work. And I found out about the News Literacy Project, and I started following them. I became a really big fan of theirs. And so after I graduated from my master's program, when the opportunity came to work there, I jumped on it because I saw news literacy as a philosophy is something that all Americans could participate in, not something that's bipartisan. It's something that everyone can get behind. And so I really wanted to do that type of work. And so it led me here. I got a job here. And so I love doing this work. I love connecting people with skills to find credible news sources so that they can live engaged life as Americans. So that's a little bit about me. So let's get straight into it. As I said, I work at the News Literacy Project. We have a ton of free tools, resources, and programs for everyone. You can go check out our website right now, newslit.org. You'll find mostly that there are a lot of cool resources for educators and students. Please, if you know any educators that are interested in this type of subject, and want to help connect their students with it, please connect them. We think that this would be a really great resource for them. So here's a little bit about NLP. We're a nonpartisan national education not-for-profit. We provide programs and resources for educators and the public so they can learn the skills and abilities to be smart, active consumers of news and information. We see news literacy as an element of the American education that everyone should have access to, no matter how old you are, what background you come from. We believe that people having the ability to identify credible news empowers them to live an active and engaged life in their communities. So I think a big part of this work kind of really centers on these ideals, right? On these 3 points. But news literacy is critical to the health of our democracy. It's paramount. Information is how we make decisions. We make decisions based off of the things that we know, right? And one of the most important, elements to that is news, right? Is the news making process, the news gathering process, journalism. And that's huge to our ability to be citizens, to participate in things like voting and going to public meetings and housing. Everything that we do, we need information to literally inform us. The second point, our democracy requires a healthy discourse, right? One of the greatest things about being American is that we can have conversations. We understand that not everyone is going to see eye to eye, but in order for democracy to work, we have to have healthy discourse, not healthy agreement necessarily. Hopefully we get to a place where we agree, but it's more about being able to listen to each other. We all understand that we have different experiences and backgrounds, but it's also important that we understand that bringing these to the table is really important. And so that brings us to the third point. We want to empower people to through news literacy, we want people to be empowered to be less susceptible to misinformation and to be able to identify credible sources of information based upon the standards of quality journalism. So let's get into it. Right now, there are so many different things in the world. There's Facebook, there's social media with Facebook and Twitter and TikTok. And then there's online streaming apps now, like Netflix and YouTube. There's mobile phones that have their apps. And now you have smart watches, right? Everything is becoming more smart now. So in this day and age, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by just the sheer volume of information, right? Because there's so much available to us right now, it makes it harder to think critically about anything, but specifically about really, really deep, controversial, or very important issues. With this amount of information overload from all of the different things, just think about the different ways that you're engaged daily, right? Just think about the different ways that you're being engaged, from TV to seeing ads, from reading a newspaper and seeing their ads, from reading a book and seeing recommendations, and seeing all these different sources of everything, reading labels. Everything is information, right? So it's easy to lead us to this information overload where we can feel sometimes anxious and make it harder for us to make decisions. Technically speaking, a lot of academics have found that information overload, when combined with echo chambers, algorithms, and passive consumption of information, increases our susceptibility to misinformation. So, major point, what is misinformation? What does that term really mean, right? I think that that's a very relevant term right now with everything that's happening in the world, but what does it actually mean? Well, at the NLP, we define misinformation as information that is false, misleading, inaccurate, or incorrect, regardless of its intent to deceive. Misinformation to us is a subcategory of disinformation. Disinformation is anything false or misleading that is knowingly and intentionally created to deceive and mislead others. Misinformation is kind of the more passive act of sharing something, but not really knowing that it's false or not. Disinformation is knowingly creating something to deceive people. And that's how we distinguish the two. The problem with misinformation and propaganda and conspiracy theories is that most of them, and the reason why people hinge onto them so strongly, is that a lot of times there's a small nugget of truth in all of these things. In misinformation and propaganda and in conspiracy theories, a lot of times there's a small nugget of truth. But the problem is that small nugget of truth could just be something mundane. It could be something simple. It could be something surface level, but using that one thing that's true about it, like the date or when it happened, creates this fog about what is actually true about it. And so there is a hard line now between what's fact and fiction. But thankfully, there are professional fact-checking organizations who are rising up now that have standards to address the nuance of misinformation. So why do people believe in misinformation? Well, there are a lot of reasons why, but I would say one of the biggest is that it's emotionally captivating, right? Like, people are manipulated by the things that they believe and are manipulated by their emotions because of that. Oftentimes they look for things to confirm their fears or their anxieties, or to confirm their worldviews. And then oftentimes people will who believe in misinformation will feel a connection to other people who believe the same things, that they're plugged into the know, that they're a part of the group that gets it, right? And so at the NLP, we want to take people from emotional reasoning, which is where you're making conclusions based off of an emotional reaction to if something feels true. We want to take them from that and take them to a place of rational reasoning, which is a place where people evaluate evidence, facts, assumptions, and all the other information to come up with the conclusion. But regardless of all this, I also want people to understand that these are natural processes that you do, right? The fact that you respond emotionally to things is not a bad thing. It's a part of the human condition. We all feel these things, and it's not bad, but it is good for us to understand them, to be aware of these things so that they can't be used against us. So a key term that we use, or that we define, is confirmation bias, which is the natural tendency of people to readily accept any information, even if false, that agrees with or reinforces their beliefs. And then the other term, motivated reasoning. When people actively search for information to confirm what they want to believe and invent reasons to discredit anything that tries to counter their beliefs. And so, the point that I made earlier, misinformation hinges on the emotional appeal. It hinges on the fact that it wants you to respond emotionally. So let's go through a few examples. This screenshot here is from the conservative group Commit for America, who has expounded some far-right views at times. They have said in this post that entitlements are bankrupting our country and the future of our children. Republicans are the only party with a plan to address our fiscal crisis and commit to the following: if you give us the majority in November, make Social Security solvent by eliminating double dippings, retirees who have a pension, IRAs, 401ks, disabled veteran benefits will be ineligible for security benefit. This raises the age for Medicare eligibility to 75, and eligibility ends for anyone over 90. So this went out to a lot of different people, went out on social media, shared on social media, and it became viral. But this is a completely inaccurate and false and made up screenshot just to stoke political division and to make people fearful of losing their benefits. But PolitiFact, an organization sponsored, a fact-checking organization sponsored by the Poynter Institute, founded that this was completely false. As you can see on their PolitiFact Truthometer, this is really false. It's pants on fire false. Like, this is a complete lie, completely fabricated. And if you notice on the bottom of this, screenshot, it says, see why fact checkers say this is false. So it's already had been flagged. When we saw this post, it was already being flagged by false checkers at Facebook, or fact checkers at Facebook, excuse me. Another example, here is Senator Murray, who said that Republicans plan to end Social Security and Medicare if they take back the Senate. Washington seniors who have spent their lives paying into these programs deserve better. So this was just basically a broad, unsupported claim. The Washington Post, who also have a fact-checking leg as well, said that Murray tweeted that if the Senate Republicans win the control of the Senate, they plan to end Social Security and Medicare. But as evidence, her staff can only point to statements by a pair of Senate Republicans that have earned little support. So this was just her, again, trying to stoke political division and to reinforce people's belief that, Republicans are against them. So it's not necessarily true. It's just her take on it. It was just it's an unsupported claim. If this is true or not, who knows? But there is no evidence to back this up. So how can you say this really? And then this is one I think is a great example of how how misinformers take advantage of a really terrible time, of a really polarizing time, and can put a lot of things out there. So around the time of the January 6th insurrection, Marjorie Taylor Greene was accused or was connected to the pipe bombing incident in a video in social media posts. That basically put the videos, I wish I had it to play, but it put the video of the pipe bomber next to Taylor Greene, and basically tried to show that like her hands were moving in the same way, they had the same mannerisms in their walk, and they tried to connect it to Taylor Greene. But there have been literally no evidence to substantiate these claims. There is no real evidence that connects her to the scene or to anything to do with it at all. This is just something that people made up to make it look real by connecting made up patterns that they made, or connecting her mannerisms to the person in the pipe bombing video. It was just a complete fabrication. It's false. So then as we see that people can create a lot of different things, they can create things to make people believe things that aren't true. Why is it so difficult to talk to people that believe misinformation if no one wants to share, right? No one wants to be wrong about sharing something, but why is it so difficult to talk to people who believe in something that is actually wrong and false? Well, the truth is, cognitively, they really do believe that this is true. They believe just as much as you believe in the opposite being true. They believe what they believe is true. And so cognitively they're also being reinforced by a them versus us mentality, right? It's like, well, if you're against me, you're just against me. So of course you're not going to see what I see. And it's quite common that you'll hear a lot of like wartime language. You hear a lot of like, I'm at battle, I'm at war, I'm on the forefront, I'm in the trenches. I'm like this type of war like talk about being in this, believing in something so strongly because they see it as us versus them. Now I'm literally at war right now because no one else believes me, only for, say, a small amount of people. And so they are, a lot of times people who believe in misinformation, they have deep mistrust in a lot of institutions already. So if they already have trouble trusting institutions, it feeds into this belief that nothing is real, that nothing is for them, that everything is working against them. And so in conversations with this person, with someone who believes in misinformation, propaganda, or conspiracy theories, you might say, man, I really can't believe that you actually believe this. But they'll respond, I can't believe you don't. And so that brings us to the point of, well, how do we get over that point? How do we actually work to debunk misinformation without making people feel confronted, and do it in a productive manner? Well, at NLP, we focus on a phrase we call PEP. Stands for patience, empathy, persistence. The first, being patient, you got to realize that it's going to take time. It's not always going to be easy. These type of conversations last longer than a day. Sometimes it might take a week, sometimes a couple months, sometimes years, right? Like, these type of conversations are personal and they mean a lot to people. The second point, empathy. You have to respect other people and what they bring to the table, right? Respect that it's an opportunity to learn from them as well and where they're coming from. You're not here to talk down on them. You're here to talk with them. It's an open conversation. You don't have some secret agenda to, make them never to believe in misinformation again. No, you want to help correct them in this one point. So you want to focus on them and think about them as well. And then the last point, being persistent. Like, sometimes you're going to have to re-engage this person. Sometimes you're going to have to think of new strategies to talk to them and really come from a place of humility. But it's also important to realize that sometimes you got to know when and when not, right? So when we say don't give up if you believe that this person, this situation, this time is worth putting up this fight. But we also believe in protecting your energy as well. And we also understand that if these conversations do not seem productive at all and they're going nowhere, please disengage, save yourself the battle. So yeah, always the first thing to think about, how important is it to me to correct this person on this issue? If this is a relationship to you that you want to grow and develop and continue to nurture, sure, it makes sense to engage them and to continue to engage them. But if it's not that, then yeah, maybe sometimes the best course of action is just to disengage and leave the conversation where it is. So if you are to engage with somebody and you do want to have these conversations and you do want to help them debunk the misinformation they believe, as we stated, the first thing is to think about what your relationship is to this person. Where will this conversation be? Will it be in public or private? Right? Are you going to do it over a Facebook chat, email, or are you going to meet them in person at coffee? Think about who else can you bring to the conversation that they can respect, right? Like, maybe not necessarily sitting down with you physically, but maybe, hey, here's, something from some doctor that you really respect, or from, if it's something around COVID, maybe it's from something from Dr. Fauci, a quote, or his latest briefing or something like that. Think about ways that how you can add credibility to what you're talking about. And then really, and this goes to the empathy part, really just honestly take the time to understand the context and the background of what they believe in at the time, right? People come from different backgrounds that have different experiences. the way that you might engage with the housing system might be completely different from how your neighbor has to deal with the housing system of America, or if or the way that you deal with the pharmaceutical industry might be one way, and your neighbor might deal with it in an entirely different way. It's important to understand the context of how people feel and why they feel that. And you can only learn that by really, truly listening to them. So there are a number of ways that the conversation can happen, and you want to be very mindful of that. The first, public online posts. This isn't really a personal touch really at all. I feel like sometimes public online posts come off more as like a teaching moment, or a correction moment, or to pick a public battle. I don't think that public online posting, to correct somebody about misinformation is the most effective. It's just sometimes the most available because it's the easiest way to just respond right then and there. But I don't always think it's the most effective, but it is one way. It is one approach. Another approach is a private online message. Instead of hitting them up in a public post, you can always just send them a DM, say, hey, actually what you just posted in this group chat, in this Facebook group is actually completely wrong, is made up, is inaccurate. Look at the source. It's not a real source. Or here's some reporting from the New York Times that actually counters that. Another element of this conversation, another space for this conversation is a one-on-one conversation. And this, I think, is more about doing it, over the phone or in person, right? Like just literally sitting down with them, having some time to talk, to literally level set with them. Because even in a private message, you can come off as being condescending or preachy or know-it-all, when really all you're trying to do is enlighten someone and, combat the spread of misinformation. But sometimes even a private message, you want to step it up a little bit more to a more personal touch. And I think sometimes maybe if that person in that relationship is big enough for you, you might want to have a one-on-one conversation. And then a group gathering, I think, might make the conversation a little bit bigger, right? So this is when you're having a discussion, right? Kind of like what we're having now, right? Is when we're discussing a topic that might be polarizing or difficult or controversial to understand or to talk about. You'll have these settings where people can openly talk. So a lot of different ways to have these conversations with people. They present themselves in a lot of spaces, but also just think about, why you're having it in this space and be mindful of the person. So as always, when using PEP, avoid confrontation, don't mock the other person, don't be combative, right? Like this isn't like a game. This is what someone really believes. Even if what they believe is wrong and inaccurate and false, they believe really strongly in it. And that means something. Like that is important. That means something. Not the fact that they believe in misinformation, but the fact that they believe in something strongly. It's hard to get anyone to think about something different outside of their ideals, even right or wrong, right? It doesn't matter the context. It's hard to make people think differently. And it's also important to ground yourself in the idea that this for them is real, right? Like this is something that they truly, really believe in. They are invested in this, and it's going to take a lot to unroot them from it. So make sure to engage in a conversation, right? In discourse, have back and forth, exchange ideas. It's not a debate. You're not trying to win, right? Like that's not the goal, is to win. The goal is to have a conversation around something that is misinforming them. But you're not trying to preach it at them. You're trying to walk the journey with them. So be open to see their sources, right? Whatever facts or evidence that they feel that they have, be willing to listen to them and, check out their sources, right? You might be surprised, and maybe they actually do have some good stuff. There's some trustworthy stuff. It's just they're misinterpreting it, right? And maybe that's an opportunity for you to come in and help them. And the final one, always be the reasonable one, right? Like, this approach is just being reasonable. That's how I look at it. It's not asking you to be an incredible human being. It's just be reasonable, right? Like, come to the conversation willing to learn. Even though you know that what they believe in is misinformation, come to the conversation willing to learn. So instead of saying that's stupid, no one believes in this, try that's interesting. Can you tell me where you heard this from? Instead of everyone know that's trash. False checkers prove this to be false. Try, I read something a little different. Do you mind if I share some of my sources with you? Instead of saying, that's so fake, I can't believe you fell for it. Try, I'm a little unsure about that. Can we do a little bit of search for more information about it? These type of things, right? This active and engaged way of being a part of this conversation with people helps them walk this journey to, and I don't want to make it big, but like a journey to enlightenment, right? Like, you have to be enlightened to this. Like, it takes a while to really realize that, wow, what I've been believing this whole time is fake. It's false. This isn't even real. It is kind of like a aha moment, like a eureka moment for people. But before you respond, always verify your facts and details, right? You can do a disservice to news literacy and keeping people informed correctly and in a credible way by, saying that you're a champion for this, but you're actually wrong on your facts and details too. So now you're just making them dig even deeper into their conspiracy theory mode, into their conspiracy theorist mode. And this brings us to one of the most useful tools the interwebs has ever created. The Google search bar is such an underrated tool. It is one of the most amazing things that we have. There is no reason to ever wonder about any question that we ever have in the world. You can literally ask your computer and it will come up with almost any answer. It will come up with some type of answer to almost every question, at least help you along that path. So we can share this. I can share this resource with you all too, if you would like. I think this is just a good infographic to have. But there's 8 specific tools on here, or 8 specific tips brought to you by a Google researcher. We partner with a Google researcher to help us, Cindy Otis, who is the author of True and False, a CIA analysis guide to spotting fake news. She helped us conceive these really cool tips on Google. And so for now, what I'll do for you all, instead of going through these simple things or going through these little basic tips, I'll show you all something as a demonstration of kind of how I go about searching about any, when I was a reporter, this is how I kind of went about looking for stories and finding angles and thinking about verification of stories and what was said. So let's take a topic, let's go with GPT. And if you do a Google search, what you'll find is the literal chat GTP site where you can find more about it. Let's see, you can scroll down some more, you'll see some news articles, that's good. You'll see some videos about it, something from How to Geek about like how to use it. Let's see. Then we got all these other related sources. So basically what I'm trying to say is once you actually type this in, once you type Chat GPT into the search box, you see a lot of different things. There's a lot of different things to click on. You don't really, so if you're trying to learn more about what Chat GPT is, yeah, you can go looking on their website, but they're going to tell you the public relations version of what you need to know. They're going to only tell you the good things, right? Because they're still trying to sell the product. They're still trying to become a big brand. So you're only really going to know so much from just checking out their page. If you wanted to know more about the technology in a credible way, a great source to use is to click the news source right here. Once you and right underneath the search bar, there's a little ribbon here. Click it, it'll take you to the news section. This is where you can get the latest articles, and you can actually get maybe not so late. You can actually go back as far as, find out when they first started talking about GPT using this tool. But for now, they have it structured that you can find the most recent articles on this topic. So these are all done by credible, trustworthy news organizations. And so you can practice, if you wanted to know more about it, what you can practice is the thing we like to call lateral reading, which is basically a skill where you take, excuse me in my tabs, where you take a Google search and you look for relevant articles. So we found one here by Uprocks. Here's one, let's see. Let's go one by Forbes. And let's see, who else do we trust as a news site? ZDNet does a really good job with technology. So let's go with them. All three of these have different takes or different angles. All three of these sites have different takes and different angles on ChatGPT. But by laterally reading, which is taking one subject idea and reading multiple platforms or multiple stories on it, you can come up with more of an idea of what's true for you or what's valid for you or what's your perception of it. You can come up with your perception of it more effectively by reading a lot of information on it, by reading a lot of credible information on it. It's kind of the idea of what you do in research, right? When you had a research paper, the idea was to go find credible information on something and then go report it back on it. So that's the idea here. So that's a really cool way that we at NLP use Google. Ever since I started as a journalist at the Sun-Times, I've been using this news feature to keep up with the latest on a particular topic, to understand what people are saying, to figure out what's true, right? Like there are some of these, sometimes you may not, I don't know what the Scottsbluff Star Herald is. I know that that's I would imagine that that's in this a small paper somewhere. I don't know what the US Sun is, and that's fine. But because we have the news feature, I can check out articles from a lot of different places. I'm familiar with Forbes, I'm familiar with Uprocks, I'm familiar with ZDNet. So I can figure out what I trust and what I deem to be authentic through that feature. So yes. Okay, cool. Back to the presentation. So if you're having a conversation with somebody about misinformation, let's take this idea, luciferase, a bioluminescent material that people are saying is a way to mark if people have had their vaccinations. So if we're having this conversation about this mysterious, biomaterial, the first steps that you want to do is actually figure out what is luciferase, right? And then figure out if it is in vaccines. The next step might be to check out, where is this coming from that's telling you not to trust this? Well, if you look at the picture, the image, the left side, bottom left side of the image, it says NTD News. I've never heard of NTD News. I'm not sure if any of you all have either. So already I'm thinking to myself, well, that's a little strange. And so if this is true, where can I find people that I actually do trust talking about this? And if it's not, what are they saying about it? So there's a cool tool that you could check out. It's called the media. You can actually Google it if you want to use it. It's called the Media Bias Fact Check. And this helps really kind of authenticate whether or not some media sites are real, if they're factual, and like where on the spectrum do they lean based off of their reporting. So according to Media Bias, NTD has very mixed reporting, which isn't a good thing. That means that, yeah, sometimes they get their reporting right, but there's a lot of times it's not factual and it's not credible. And so overall, they thought that it was a right-leaning media platform that promotes conspiracy, propaganda, lack of transparency, and false claims. So I would take this media report, I would take what I found from Media Bias, and I would go to my friend who believed that luciferase could track if people had COVID vaccinations. I would tell them, I've never heard of NTD News, so I checked them out. They don't seem to be very credible. They are very partisan. I did, however, find another news source that conflicts with this information. You should check this out. So I did my research. I went to Reuters, who did a fact check about this, actually. Reuters fact check unfounded the conspiracy claims about it, and actually found out because, because of the name luciferase, it has Lucifer in it, people were attributing it to satanic illusions. They were basically saying that it was like the market, that because of luciferase, that the COVID-19 vaccine was actually the mark of the beast. So again, a lot of times in conspiracy theories, we see a lot of these things attributed to the Bible, end of days, religion, that type of stuff. And so, well, even though I pulled out this Reuters article, and Reuters is pretty trustworthy, but for people who don't read Reuters, maybe they don't trust them as much. And so I would use the same media bias fact check, or the same media bias check that I used on NTD. I would do the same thing with Reuters. And so what I found from Reuters was that they're a very modestly biased organization, a little bit left-leaning, but they're objective reporting, and they're very high for fact-checking themselves and properly sourcing with minimum bias and clean record. So definitely a very different story. You can go back on Reuters history. It's been around since 1851. So if somehow you could tell yourself that Reuters, if this person could tell themselves that Reuters isn't trustworthy or credible, then it doesn't seem to me that this is going to be a conversation that you should probably continue for long, because I don't know how you can get more credible than 200 plus years of news making. And if that's still not enough for this person, what you might want to do is to check out more science. You might want to get closer to the science behind it. But that's not always going to work. Sometimes it does, but it's the next step. And so when I did further research after this person didn't agree with my Reuters evidence, I said, I learned something interesting about this. Did you know Lucifer is Latin for light bearer, right? Like, what is actually referring to is the chemical process that allows animals to glow, like fireflies and different animals like that, jellyfish. They have luciferase enzymes in them as well. So really, this is talking about something that doesn't, like, they're connecting something that isn't like real. It's not really real. They're just making a false connection. And if they still don't believe that this is what it is, and they're like, WebMD, are they really real doctors? I don't know. I don't trust that source. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you don't trust WebMD. But Could you trust the actual US patent, the actual patent that was made for luciferase about like the way that the government wants to use it? They literally outline it in this abstract, right? The abstract is for biological technology, so they can be able to identify certain things in certain species and certain animals and certain organisms. It has no mention of COVID-19. It has no mention of the vaccine. Clearly, the patent for the government patent for the use of luciferase is outlined here. Another level of authentication you can provide someone. And if still at this point, after doing this type of work, and it seems that the discussion is still going nowhere, and that is still being combative, at this point, yes, it is totally fine to disengage. Even if you felt at some point before this point, those are 3 different ways of providing extra research. If at this point, even before those different steps, if at step 1 you felt that would be best to disengage. Save yourself the battle, save yourself the fight, right? This has to be an open-minded, 2-sided discussion. This has to be a journey that both of you are on, not just one. So if you feel the need to disengage, please do. Don't waste your energy. And so that brings us to the next part. The last part of this is, Mario, how can I get active in combating against misinformation? What could I use to empower my friends and family so they can do the same thing, right? If I see something wrong, how can I know? How can I help? Well, great question. We actually have created a new platform, a new fact-checking platform called Rumor Guard that we would love for you all to get engaged with, to check out. It is a platform that debunks misinformation and facts check some of the things that are going on in society, especially on social media. It's a way for people to really actively get involved against the fight against misinformation, because not only do we show you some examples that are relevant on the web right now, but we actually do it in a way where we walk you through the steps where you could fact check and debunk misinformation yourself. So we have this 5-factor authentication system to prove whether or not something is credible. So we go through things like authenticity. Is it authentic, right? Has this been fabricated or doctored in any way? Has it been sourced correctly, right? Is this a reliable source, someone trustworthy, someone that you can, someone that is an official? Or is there evidence, right, that proves this claim? Or is there a lack of evidence that doesn't prove it, right? That you can't believe it if it isn't enough evidence, right? Or is the context in the right light? Is this actually being portrayed accurately? Is this being portrayed fairly? And then things like also the reasoning of it. Like, is this actually what people are saying about this? Is this actually what's going on? And that last part is really about the reasoning part, is really about the critical thinking element of it all. So unlike most fact-checking sites who kind of show you like literally, who just tell you like, no, this is wrong, this is not real, this is false, we'll tell you that this is false, but we'll also show you the steps in which we got there. And then hopefully the more you check these things out, you can pick up these skills to do them yourselves. Of course, if you want to join, if you want to get more people plugged into the movement, you want to grow the news literacy movement, you want to fight back against misinformation, I please implore you to go to rumorguard.org/join, sign up for Rumor Guard. Please check out all of our free resources, all of our programs and platforms. Please check them out. And I think at this point, I will open the session up to questions. I guess I'll check out the chat first. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Demario?
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder if before we get to questions, could you discuss and maybe show the Checkology app, or is that connected to RumorGuard?
It's not connected to RumorGuard. Let me see if I can pull it up. Checkology.
Yeah, everyone, the Checkology app is what the News Literacy Project has made available to schools. And I don't have a sense of how much this has spread so far. If you have information about that, that would be really interesting too.
Yeah, Checkology is actually in I think 12 states. I got to get that number correct, but it's about in 12 states now. The movement for news literacy is growing in America. I think there are 3 going on 4 states that are mandating or requiring in some way that youth be taught at least 1 unit of news literacy, media literacy, information literacy. They're different names for the same thing, but we're really excited about the movement that we're seeing politically. So definitely, I would say that there are, since the pandemic, the need for this type of stuff has definitely increased. We're really excited about this. We're really excited about how people are getting on board, especially at the last couple of election cycles. So yeah, we think that this is a great product that continues to get better. We're really happy that we can offer it for free. And I'll kind of take you through it now because you guys can see my screen. Let's see. Sorry, my computer's being a little slow. Yep, there we go. So we have a lot of lessons here. We break down what news actually is, how it works, and what determines newsworthiness. We break down things like the First Amendment and why it's so important to have the rights of the press protected. We actually have a lesson in algorithms and how important algorithms are to what you see online. Then we have this really cool lesson on being an editor where we give you some scenarios on newsworthiness, and you got to decide how to send out reporters and what to cover. Our newest lesson is on, we also have a lesson on conspiratorial thinking and why conspiracy theories are so captivating. And our newest lesson, Harm and Distrust, talks about the historical failures of mainstream news organizations, covering marginalized communities like Black and brown communities in America. So I'll just give you a little taste of what it looks like here.
Optimize the sound or something. Oh, tell tomorrow he might have to go back out of the share to turn on the sound for the screen share.
You might have to turn on the sound for screen share or optimize.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know you guys couldn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Mouse keeps disappearing.
You might have to.
Let's see. Hold on. I'm trying to go into it.
He might have to get out of the screen share and come back into it.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, I see. Okay. Let's
Yeah, it's the share screen with the buttons on the bottom that to provide the sound and optimize it.
Let's see. Share. Oh, okay, I see. You hear it now? Is it playing now?
You have to start the.
been having more, and I've been in journalism for about 5 years. Party City's only commitments. Education. Stories.
You might have the setting to 2 times.
Change the setting for YouTube 2 times.
The speed of the YouTube might be too much. Just from seeing her mouth.
Jonathan says the speed of the YouTube might be too fast.
I want the people who don't live there to have a clear understanding.
That's good.
Yep. So that's just one of the lessons on Checkology. We have a number of them that we've worked on. We've been going through them. We've been getting feedback from different audiences to figure out literally like what would be the best thing that you would want to have in your classrooms? What type of things could we teach in news literacy that would be really engaging for students?
Are they aimed at a particular age group?
Checkology is for, I believe, middle school to high school students, specifically.
Good, because I think you can't start too soon. You know, middle school, where I used to teach, is a good place to start, especially if there are requirements for a civics class at that level.
Yes, absolutely. Like we're really encouraged by the political movement around news literacy. I mean, there's still a long ways to go. Like I said, there's only like 3 or 4 states who have adopted some policy around even just one unit of it. But it's spreading more and more, and it's becoming a bigger movement. So we're very encouraged by it.
Okay, Gabe has his hand up and has the first question.
Hi, thanks. This was great. I just wanted to mention a book that I had read and a tip that the book offered. The book was How to Talk to a Science Denier, and it was really wonderful. It goes through a lot of the things that were covered here. The author did something very interesting. The first chapter describes his visit to a flat earther convention. And
Wow.
these are people who actually genuinely believe that the earth is flat. And they have reasons that they can explain that. And they believe it's a giant conspiracy, that airline pilots and everybody else and the astronauts are all really part of this immense conspiracy. And so that chapter is interesting and appalling at the same time. But the point that he made that I think really meshes with everything that you said is that if you try to do a frontal attack, if you just try to tell people that they're stupid, that they're idiots, it won't work because their belief is part of their identity.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to deny explicitly what they believe is really attacking them personally. It's attacking their personality. And so they're just guaranteed to resist. And what he said is to develop a relationship, to ask questions, ask how they come to believe something and what they have read and where they've heard this kind of material, and especially to ask them what might convince them to question their belief. So don't offer that immediately, but ask them, well, you believe this, but what if that? What if I could show you this other thing?
Yep.
And he suggested doing it slowly, doing it gently, not confrontationally, not to be threatening. And he said, you're much more likely to, with some people, have some success. He says that some people are truly irretrievable, that nothing that you say, do, demonstrate, prove with facts will work. But other people who are not maybe in it deeper up above their waist, in the quicksand, can actually be reasoned with if you start slowly and work incrementally and just simply show them things that cause them to question what they've been believing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point. I like what Van said in the chat, to lead with curiosity. And I think that that's one of the ways that you kind of like, it's a journey. The way I look at it is that it's a journey. And so in order to get from point A to point B, there's steps, there's things that needs to happen. Sometimes there's missteps that happen, right? So for instance, as you're talking about something that someone might be misinformed on, and you ask them about their sources, for instance, and you not, criticize them, you just are a little skeptical, like, hey, I don't recognize this news source. Do you know about it? Like, where have you heard about this place from? And they might go, I actually have never heard about this. Why do I believe in this? And then that internal process of asking themselves questions can help them unroot from that belief.
Sure, you let them actually do the hard work. And
Yep.
and Roy suggested that I mention a great resource here in DC, DC Skeptics. And if you just search for Washington DC Skeptics, you'll come up with their website, and they have monthly meetings, and there's a wonderful discussion mailing list where people can chat and share links and share resources and hear presentations that mesh with everything that we've been talking about today. How to understand reality and how to understand truth and how to debunk all of the nonsense that's rampant out there. So DC Skeptics.
Thanks for that. I'll check them out.
Next, go to Lawrence and Diana.
Okay. And they've been around for a long time, but now the next up is Lawrence.
I'm going to wind this up.
Scientific study, and they found that if you pay people to identify what they think is true or false, and you pay them for correct answers, people, even though they have false beliefs, will correctly identify what is true. That they're quite often they espouse something that is false because it's tied up, as someone said, in their identity. But if you actually pay them, they're willing to identify what is true. My question to you is that I looked at the Checkology, and the Checkology is basically a full website. And I'm wondering if you're looking at something that's more mobile. And the reason for that is that I was appalled to learn that 20% of people 30 and under are getting their primary news source is TikTok, or their primary news source is YouTube. And a full-fledged website is not going to work terribly well for somebody who's using their iPhone as their major news source. So I don't know how you would do that, but are you looking into that?
Yeah, no, Checkology, what I showed you all was the browser-based version. We have it on the app. I think we prefer people to use it on the smartphone, on your smartphone. We use it in classrooms, make it available for teachers to use in their classroom teaching curriculum. We try to be very mobile as much as we can. That's kind of what led to the development of Rumor Guard, right? Where we saw on social media, some of them, like, that's one of the biggest sources of misinformation. To your point about YouTube and Twitter, like, you can't trust them as news sites, but at the same time, people get so much information from it, not just news, all different types of information. So we created Rumor Guard as a way for people to start combating some of that misinformation and being able to identify the tools that they need in order to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Diana, you're next.
Okay. Demario, I was wondering, I didn't see the full list of the units that your Checkology was site includes for education. Is there one in there about video editing for falsehood? I'm asking because I have one particular friend who only trusts YouTube. And he thinks that if he sees a video about something, it must be true. And he trusts that. And he doesn't seem to realize that video can be edited to show whatever. And that some of the things that he has referred me to were obviously false.
Yeah.
So I wondered if that's included in your course of instruction about manipulating.
Yeah, no, we go deep into data visualizations and the way how numbers can be misconstrued against you. We also go into that as well, talking about how what is it, the AI, how the AI images now, like they're creating, what do you call it, like headshots for people now. We're creating stuff to even talk about GPT, sorry. We're creating things now to help people navigate that tool as well. Like, we're not against tools like Chat GPT, but we're for people using it in a effective and considerable and mindful way. So yes, we're definitely working on some more as new technologies present themselves. We're working on more things, but we do have a lot in technology. We do have stuff around video manipulation already.
Good.
Okay, Mike, you're up next.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, good presentation. Let me just ask you, what role should journalism schools play in this battle for the truth, in effect? I mean, the biggest issue is what the media is saying, and a lot of the media, unfortunately, is very distorted. It's a case of the fox in the chicken house, and the more foxes than you can handle. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. That is an awesome question. I often think about what the responsibility of journalism schools are in this current media landscape. But to be honest, the journalism schools I went to, and I would imagine most of them, they're quality places. And ever since I went to a really prestigious university and I went to a lesser known school, and both of those schools, the journalism professors I worked with were very earnest, they were very modest, they were very great professionals, they had high ethics, high standards, and they taught me everything that I believe in journalism. And so I would say that to believe that the onus needs to be on journalism, I'm not saying that you said that, or in journalism schools, I think is counterintuitive, because they're the ones who are actually teaching the right stuff. They're teaching people how to use things the right way. Where I think that they can where I think that they can kind of grow at is bridging the gap with regular people, with everyday people. It's incumbent upon journalism as a whole to pull the curtain back on the process of journalism, to help people realize, like, hey, you need us in order to get the information so that you can live your everyday life, so that you can vote effectively, so that you can go to certain meetings, so you can be aware of what rights and benefits you have. That information, the stories that break in newspapers, you can't hear them anywhere else. You won't learn about them anywhere else except for on news sites. And so we need those type of stories. We need these investigations that are, pulling the curtain back on people of power and showing their corruption. We need that type of stuff. So I would say that journalism schools can, just like journalism organizations, start to do more work with educating the public on what journalism does and how it functions in their everyday lives.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I'm not saying there's a question of their internal value, within the school, but they have to bring forth in the public arena their view of what's happening in terms of communications. And they ought to have a forum on that on a regular basis. And they could have a counterpart with other people who are notable. And this needs to be brought to a more public view, what the shortcomings are.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that that's where organizations like the News Literacy Project steps up. I think that we have a certain capacity for bridging that gap with people. Maybe journalists and academics don't necessarily have, right? The action of actually teaching journalism, the action of actually doing journalism, on top of having to have the space to, show people, hey, this is how it works for you, or this is why it's important. I think that that's, in a sense, kind of what NLP does. And that's the space where I really wanted to be, because I've been in situations where I've been a everyday news reporter. I've been in communities talking to people, and I really realized that people don't see the need for news in their lives. They think it's pointless. They would rather pay for a $14 subscription to Hulu than to pay for a subscription to their local newspaper. And I think that that's a really pressing issue in our country right now. People need credible information to make really accurate and effective decisions for themselves.
Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Diana has asked whether Snopes is a reliable. Snopes is a reliable source.
We're pretty big. We don't endorse anybody, any fact-checking organization. We just endorse the fact that there are multiple. We endorse the fact that there's a field of study for fact-checking. But we are fans of Snopes. We do like Snopes. We just don't endorse people, but we do think Snopes is, we like to say that, personally, I'll say this. Personally, I deem Snopes reliable, but how you might deem something reliable might differ from what I would say. But based off of my thing, I would say yes. But for you, that might look a little different.
Ken has his hand up, and Jonathan has a question. I'll get up to next. Ken?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I actually sent this in the chat also, but the recent Dominion voting machine case against Fox News and the revelation of the various text messages from Fox News shows that people at Fox News knew that these allegations that the 2020 election was stolen, but they had to keep bringing on and letting people speak who were propagating these rumors, because their fear was that if they don't do that, their listeners are going to go to other, sources like One American News and that sort of places. So the people were following the story they wanted to hear. I mean, and I think you touched on this earlier. And it's like, how do you talk to people who obviously, these are people for whom I think Fox has probably been a trusted source for a very long period of time. But
Right.
Now Fox is telling them something that they don't necessarily want to hear. So it's like, well, bye, I'm going to go to this other guy who is telling me what I want to hear. So they want to hear what they want to hear, and they don't really care what the truth is. They just want to be able to hear what they want to hear. And I mean, I was looking at all the things you were talking about, and if someone is that rigid in their thinking that, suddenly Fox is no longer a trusted source for them, how can you really speak to somebody like this? And I just want to throw something else out there that's related but different, similar. I live in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and we have a small newspaper here, and people love to share their thoughts in the editorial page. And I have seen people write in saying, what's wrong with this country is that the Democrats believe, XYZ. And I'm a Democrat. Most of my friends are Democrats, and all these things they're pointing out are, number one, things that I have never heard anyone who's a Democrat, whether just a regular person like myself or someone in the government, say. I mean, they're saying, but this is what their trusted sources are telling them that Democrats believe, and these people believe it to such an extent they want to write to the news. So and I think so. They want to believe what they want to believe, and I just don't know, how do you have a rational conversation with somebody like that? And I'm going to mute myself.
No, thank you so much for that, Ken. I think it's hard, right? Like, that's a great example of how complicated the news cycle is. Ideally, the news should inform you and give you information that helps you access a better life, right? If that's putting you in touch with better programs and putting you in touch with, opportunities to get housing, blah, blah, blah. That's ideally what a newspaper should do, or a news organization should do. What we're seeing, I think part of what we're seeing with this is also that the revenue of news is changing. The way that news makes money is changing. It's really much audience driven now, not circulation driven, right? And circulation is about people in a defined space, right? So like the Sun-Times circulation is mostly Chicago. Like it's a bigger newspaper, so they get a little circulation outside of Chicago, but most of that is in a defined space. With the advent of the web, now your audience could be all around the world, right? You can have audience of different demographic groups, all different type of different demographic groups. Like, yeah, your circulation can too, but now your audience can have so many different demographics. So I think now it's incumbent upon news organizations to find ways to juice the system. Like they need to make as much money as possible. And I think with instances like Fox, but you also see it on the left side too. You see some of these decisions made around editorial decisions and story selections made off of what people want to read, because they see what people click on. They can see the articles that are getting the most viewership. So the suggestion that that news organizations are being influenced by their revenue is a true. That's a real conversation to be had, right? But the more ethical journalism and news sites, they try to show you and be very clear and transparent that while we know that our revenue is affected by how many people read these things, we're also taking steps to make that not our most important metric. We're making steps to make that not the biggest part of our business. And that's why you see a lot of news organizations going non-for-profit now, because they can't keep up with the revenue generation of organizations that aren't as ethical.
Structural problem.
Structural problem, yeah.
It's a lot, right? It's a lot. It's other things too. Now, to be fair, it is other things. Sometimes the revenue is more about the fact that the way that they structured themselves originally just didn't work, and they need to figure out a new model. But a lot of times, I think that comes down to their independency or sense of social responsibility too. I think a lot of times when they decide to become non-for-profits, or this explosion of news media, becoming non-for-profits, I think part of that is also them saying, hey, we realize we have a responsibility to communities and not just towards what makes us more money.
Right. Okay, Jonathan has a question in chat, and I should mention anybody that is on a Mac that the chat has a lot of links that are in it. You can currently save it. It will be sent out to the members. So after the meeting, but there are a lot of good links there. But Jonathan's question was regarding connecting with my statement about generative AI, is whether NLP views generate AI as a means to combat misinformation or a bigger problem for misinformation, or both.
That is a good question. I would say very simply, yes. Yes, it's all of those things. All of those things. We are very excited for this type of technology, but we're very skeptical, right? Because when things like this happen, people are trying to manipulate the system. They're trying to mislead people. So we are trying, we're not against it. We're not against technology. We're not against people coming up with new things. We're not against that type of development or that type of disruption. I think we are trying to be more mindful of that, because we realize even with social media, everybody was super excited for social media, but we realized there's a lot of things that we did wrong because we weren't mindful, or actually because it was the first time we ever had something like that. So there's going to be some mistakes that we make. And so there's going to be some stuff that we do wrong with generative AI. So I think that is just something to be mindful of, to watch carefully. But we're not against it, and we're not also cheerleading it either. We're just watching in the weeds to see how it develops, and then we'll respond from there.
Yep. As I mentioned earlier, you got to be very cautious of what information an AI is giving you currently, because there is no validation except your own, and then follow up on that.
Yep.
So I don't see any further questions. I think Diana had a question, but she put her hand down. So
Oh, man.
it was a great presentation. We thank you very much. And here comes Jonathan in our hybrid meeting with changing seats.
Demario, what I wondered was, are you guys familiar with Adfantes Media?
No, I am actually. They do the media's bias charts, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm familiar.
But let me tell you why I say that, because it's connected to the previous question I asked. One thing that we're struggling with generative AI is that for the most part, the World Wide Web has a lot of information, but not marked for whether it's true or false.
Yep.
And so what I only know about Adfantes Media because my daughter in New York City is part-time working for them.
Oh, nice.
And in LinkedIn, the leader of the Adfantes Media wrote an amazing piece about the need to connect generative AI to databases where a marker is set for what's true or not. So that looked to me to be the first thing I've read of a way ahead for how to address the generative AI issue.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing, right? I think for me, though, I am a proponent of the free access to the internet, and I'm sure all of you are too. Like, I love the open access to things and to be able to toy with things and stuff like that. So I think not that this is necessarily that, but it can be construed in some way. So just for argument's sake, I think I'm against levels of censorship. I'm not sure how much I would consider this censorship because you're literally labeling something, but it means like, okay, well, what's the definition of something being fake versus real with generative AI, right? If somebody's using a picture to get a headshot generated of them, right? And this is their real picture, but it's a fake, it's a generated image, right? So then like, what's the lines then, right? Like technically, this is an altered image, but it's of a real person, is actually of them. So there are some lines that I'm a little bit unsure of, and there's some nuance that will have to be like ironed out. But I'll definitely have to read more about what he said, because that sounds like a really interesting take, and I'd love to know more.
Yeah, what's the strength of the internet the way it is now is how available it is to everyone. But the dilemma we have is the generative AI doesn't have the judgment that you have, Demario.
Right.
And so I think that's what poses the issue. Let's go on to Diana.
I was just going to ask Jonathan, because I hadn't heard of that organization, what is it that they are trying to do to, are they trying to monitor the accuracy of things that are posted on the internet, or what exactly is their goal?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Apparently what they do, I've only touched the surface of this so far, is they hire people with journalism backgrounds from across the political spectrum. And what they do is classify things that have come out that are on the web along a spectrum of, is this subject to a true or false? Because as Demario illustrated, some things really aren't.
Right.
And so in the process of doing that over a series of years, they now have databases of websites and other compilations that have been graded that way.
So, I mean, I was thinking, what could be done with some of these things that are posted on various forums that are simply flat out wrong, inaccurate. Wouldn't it be wonderful if some kind of artificial intelligence could flag them immediately?
Here's my response. It's about 50% correct.
Yeah, so here's on my screen now. I just pulled up a couple of screenshots from Adfantes. They do these like media bias charts really well. We use these a lot in our work. Basically, showing you the how left or how conservative something is. But there's larger questions about bias in the media. We don't have to get into it now, but Ad Fontes does some really good work on NS, and we love it. We have some differences in how we talk about media bias, but we think that they do a really good job in their work.
Oh, no, I didn't turn the record on. Thanks so much for talking about that, Demario. Pi members, do you have any other questions for Demario?
I think I have a little dot that says it's being recorded. Oops.
I don't think so.
I think the last thing, Demario, that I have to ask you. See, this is what happens. Bill Wydrow, you're next.
Yeah, I just wonder if you have a general opinion about Wikipedia as a source. Before I got some of your resources today about how to look them up, I have a right-wing person that I've been in email dialogue with, and when this person sends me articles, I check out the source first by looking at Wikipedia, and then I try to go to some other places to verify that, but that's usually where I've started. I just wonder if you have a general opinion of the reliability of Wikipedia information.
Well, when I was in school many years ago, it was highly frowned upon to use to cite Wikipedia, right? It was highly frowned upon. But as a journalist now, though, like, times are changing. Even as a journalist, right? I was told not to source certain organizations. So it was like the National Enquirer and TMZ. But TMZ, which is like a gossip site, has become a credible news site. Like, it actually has. Like, TMZ is the place that broke Kobe Bryant's death. They were the first ones to do it. It was controversial because they released it before the police did, but they were the first people on it. So I've noticed that a lot of news organizations have started to reference TMZ. I say that to say that times are changing. What I was told in school does not really apply now, because even when Wikipedia first came out to a degree, they had cited sources on their like landing pages. They did even then. And now it's even more robust. There are plenty of different resources you can find. I think actually starting with Wikipedia is a good place to start. It's definitely not the place to end. If you start there, make sure you scroll all the way down to the references cited and pick from there. Continue on from there. Continue laterally reading from there. Click some of the hyperlinks that Wikipedia has. Continue to be curious. But no, I think actually, despite what you might have heard, it is a good place to start. Just don't end there.
I think in the beginning, they were trying to get people to go back to the old encyclopedias and other places, you know. But now it's like that's what it is a real encyclopedia.
No, it has accomplished. Wikipedia definitely has accomplished that. Amazingly so. As much flack that they used to get across academia for not being reliable, they kind of have become the internet's encyclopedia, for sure.
Right.
All right, thank you again for the questions. I wanted to let Demario know that we are going to send you one of our Pi mugs for doing our presentation. And
thank you.
We hope that you'll send us a screenshot back so that we can have your mugshot.
Okay, gotcha.
With your picture. And I think Jonathan has done the meeting drawing for today's meeting. So Jonathan will announce who wins the drawing, and whoever is the winner, contact me as far as whether you want an air tag sent to you or a gift card. It'll be an Apple Store gift card. Or I think it's either between $20 or $25.
And it looks like number 9, Ann Zabaldo.
It looks like Ann is today's winner. So we will send that to Ann. I think I have her email address. She just needs to send me the mailing address that she'd like me to send it to. She can send that to her to private.
Wow. Down payment on my new MacBook Pro.
Yes. Something, be able to add something to your system.
That's right.
Or AirTag it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
just let me know what you'd like. So,
Thank you.
and I don't know whether we have any other final words. Oh, Jonathan, yes,
May I?
yes, Jonathan.
Yeah, what I wanted to suggest for PI members is go visit the News Literacy Project. And if you support what they're doing, then direct some resources their way.
Thank you for the endorsement, Jonathan. I really appreciate that. Yes, please, please, please. If you guys feel like what we do is great, or you love our mission and you like the fact that we offer all our resources for free of charge, please help us continue to do this work. Please follow us. We have a newsletter called The Sift. Please join that. Just become active with us as much as you possibly can. We would love to have you join this journey with us. And thank you all so much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you all today.
I mentioned that we'll have the YouTube video.
And Demario, if you could let the people who made this possible today, it was Hannah Covington that I first interacted with, and then Christina, just let everybody know how happy we are that we were able to arrange this, because I think the PI members really appreciated it. So thanks so much, Demario.
No, thank you all so much. I was happy that Hannah had some other engagements and I got a chance to speak with you all today. It was really cool. I love teaching this stuff. I love talking about this stuff. And you guys were really amazing with the questions, and it was a great conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Brent.
Hey, Roy. Yeah. Yes. So we have a great YouTube video of this, and we'll certainly promote it and try to get more exposure to this. Great topic, great discussion, very, very valuable in today's news market to know more about this and know what we can trust and rely on. So again, thank you very much. Our next meeting will be the Clubhouse on the first Saturday. We'll always have the first Saturday and third Saturday as Clubhouse. Learners Seg will be coming up on the second Tuesday. We'll have more information about that. First Thursday. Sorry. So we'll have more information posted about that. So barring any further other questions or comments, we can adjourn today's great meeting. And remember, if you've got a Mac, save the chat if you want to access those resources quickly. Otherwise, it will be emailed or posted at Groups.io and TCS for you to download and reference later. So some great stuff. We can really have a lot more knowledge in the news that we pursue and read. So thank you, everybody, for coming to the meeting.
And thank the
Bye-bye.
Oh, yes, I'd like to thank anybody that's been on YouTube watching this also. Contact us if you'd like some more information about the Apple user group.
Adios.
Adios. Bye then.
Bye. Great meeting as always. Thank you.
Yes. And yeah.
Always the experiment of whether the hand goes up.
People like to experiment whether the hand triggers the hand up, which I haven't turned on and keep.
Oh, Vans did.
Yeah, Vans is working.
Man, you're the most reliable, I think.
Not sure what it takes.
In so many ways, Jonathan.
Yes. That's why you see the hand.
Bye, guys.
Bye then.
Now, actually, is there any truth to the rumor that Aaron Davis is actually an AI?
I did.
I mean, I'd like to have that fact checked, please.
Well, I think the other person you could accuse that of is Bruce.
Yes. I saw something where somebody
Well,
did create an AI of Steve Jobs, but I haven't looked at that to see that, but
I chatted to the Steve Jobs.
oh,
There's something called character.ai that I think has that.
yeah. So,
I was, it's what you guys were talking about. I know you guys are, more into this chat GPT stuff than I am, but I mentioned this to Josiah. I was talking to him the other day. And have you guys heard of Chat PDF?
no,
No. Okay. Go if you want to check it out. I don't know. I haven't really played around with it for more than 12 minutes, but it's apparently a chat bot kind of arrangement, but you constrain it by giving it a single PDF.
oh,
So it's a way to have summarizations, interaction, but you're not going out to the web and getting all kind of craziness. You're constraining it.
wow.
And I'm thinking this could be really interesting in some organizations and institutions where they could use AI intelligence, chatbot kind of intelligence, but constrain it and say, we don't want you using the web. We want you to use our 4,000-page instruction manual for how to do things in our organization or whatever.
Right.
Or our 6,000-page PDF on how to repair an airplane jet engine or whatever it happens to be. And so all of this then would go back and forth, but not risking virtually any of the downsides of a sort of internet search, but it would constrain it to whatever source of information you wanted to use. I could see some uses for that.
And ChatGPT will do exactly that. I'm on a journalist list, and they're talking about using ChatGPT to summarize a specific document. And it does not go any further than looking at the document you feed it.
Yeah.
I can see a lot of benefits. I can see a lot of benefits of that for many instances when you're not wanting to go into the wild west.
Well, the thing that pops right into my mind would be very interesting, having a chat with a book that's a PDF. Chat with the authors, or where was this author, or what did this author do, or what do you think? So many. I'm gonna have to look that up myself.
I uploaded I haven't played with it very much, but I uploaded a 100-page PDF or quick start guide for an owner's manual for a car. And I thought, well, I could play with this a little bit. I could do a Google search or other kinds of things, but it might be fun just to chat with the owner's manual and see what I can learn about tire pressure or whatever it happens to be.
Yes. Great. Good reference. We'll put that in the chat.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody. I'm going to leave the meeting. Here we go. Or leave. Oh, that's because Jonathan's the host.